Bruce Johnson, founder and CEO of BizScalers and the BizScalers Club. And today I want to talk to you about how do you keep great people? How do you keep great people on your team? Have you ever spent time worrying about the people on your team, especially those key people, about whether or not they're going to leave you or not? Or when you're getting ready to hire somebody, do you tend to spend a lot of time worrying about, will this person actually be good and will they stay for any length of time? Especially when you think about all the time, effort, energy, and money that you've invested in trying to get this person, it's just kind of normal to worry about that. Now, if you've worried about either one of those things, the good news is that you're going to really enjoy this week's training. And the way I'm going to answer this week's question is I want to give you a little sneak taste of one of the leadership lessons that I create in the BizScalers Club each week. The one I'm going to give you this week is number 46. This current week, I just recorded number 89, and so every week I create a new one, but I think you're going to enjoy this one, number 46. It's simply entitled, They're All Going to Leave. They're all going to leave. Once you own this principle, this leadership lesson, it will change you. You won't spend time worrying anymore, and more importantly, you're going to do what you need to do to make sure that it's really difficult for great people to leave your company. I think you're going to enjoy both sides of the question and discussion today. I think you're really going to enjoy this leadership lesson. So if you want to know more about this, make sure you check out the BizScalers Club at scalingclub.com. But until then, make sure you enjoy this following clip. Hi, and welcome to this week's leadership lesson from the trenches. This one is number 46. They're all going to leave. They're all going to leave. I was talking with one of our members in BizScalers this week, and he was getting ready to hire somebody, and he was asking a question that you probably have asked yourself. Yeah, but what if I hire them, I invest all this time, and then they leave or they don't make it? Or you might ask this question. Let's say you have someone who's a really great talent on your team, makes a lot of contribution, is very valuable to you, and you're worried or stressed out or fearful that someone's going to recruit them away or they're going to leave. My guess is you can relate to either one of those scenarios. Either when you're trying to hire somebody or when you're trying to keep someone on, there's this fear that comes, what happens if they don't make it, or what happens if they're going to leave? And my answer to both of those scenarios is the exact same thing, which is they're all going to leave. Now, whether they leave in 6 months or 6 years, whether they leave in 2 years or 4 years or 8 years or 12 years or 15 years, the reality is they're all going to leave. So let's think about that fear for a moment. Now, if you don't like the word fear, worry is fine. Worry is just a low-level fear, right? There's this sense of anxiety. What happens if something bad happens? In this case here, somebody leaves. Well, what drives that expectation? Well, what drives the expectation is a negative expectation about a future outcome. And if you assume that there's a big bad thing on the end, let's just say it's this week and you're struggling to make payroll, and you think, well, I think I have enough, and it's just the last 5% that I don't know how to make up. It's Monday. I'm not sure we're going to be able to make it by Friday. That would be kind of a low-level negative expectation that we can't figure it out this week. If, on the other hand, you look at your cash and you go, you know what, there's no way. We're behind 50% or 80%. How in the world are we going to do that? Then your fear is greater, right? So the more that you perceive something to be bad and the bigger that gap is, then the more fear that you experience. So it's either low or high, but it's really an expectation about something that hasn't happened yet. So what I say to everybody is if you want to get rid of the fear, what you do is reduce the expectation. You change the expectation. You challenge the expectation. And in this case, I would always challenge it and say, listen, they're all going to leave. Whether or not they leave in 3 months, 3 years, 6 months, 6 years, really is irrelevant. They're all going to leave. So just get it off the table. Don't even worry about it. It's not a question you need to spend a lot of time thinking about. They're all going to leave. Now, once you adapt this as a good leadership principle, then there are going to be some very clear ramifications. I want to share 4 of them with you that hopefully will help you become a much better leader. Once you get rid of that expectation about trying to keep them forever until you don't want them anymore, the first thing I would say is that then you start investing as much time as possible in making them become a better person. So whether they're going to be with you for a year or 5 years, really irrelevant. You want to make sure as a leader that you're investing in helping this person become the best version of themselves possible, because part of leadership is producing results through other people, and it's also about creating leverage. So the better the person is that's on your team, the better leverage you're going to get and the better results you're going to get, which is what you should be doing anyway as a leader. So if you stop worrying about somebody leaving and you instead focus your time and energy on how can I make this a better person, then a bunch of other things are going to happen. For example, they're probably going to stay around a lot longer, right? Because people like to stay around people who invest in them, help them become better. You're also going to end up getting better results, which is really good, which means you're probably going to have better profitability, which again is pretty good. Those people, when they leave, and they are all going to leave, will always remember that time with you as something that was special. They became better under you and your leadership. Whether they were there for 3 years or 13 years, it's irrelevant. You're not going to have everyone for all of life. So just figure out, during this span of time on this journey of this individual, I want to invest as much time as possible into this person and make them the best version that they can be. And the rest of their lives, they're always going to reflect back on those 3 years or 6 years or 10 years, or whatever the time frame is going to be, and think, those were some of the best years of my life. And then they're going to remember you and the impact that you had on their life, and they will always be grateful to you. And every other business owner or entrepreneur who they work for is going to be grateful for what you did. Like, there's nothing that you lose by focusing not on losing them, but focusing on helping them become better versions of themselves. Everybody wins. And by the way, if you're shooting to try to recruit a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds, this is a really good policy for you too, because they're going to want to go work for someone who's going to invest in them and help them become a better version of themselves. So number one, if you don't worry about them leaving, just invest in making them better. Whatever amount of time they have with you, make sure that time was one of the best times of their lives. The second ramification is that you should systematize everything. Now, if you haven't taken the course yet on systems yet in BizScalers, make sure you do that ASAP, because you want to make sure that intellectual property doesn't reside in a person. That's one of the reasons why people are afraid if somebody leaves, because they know that that person knows certain things that no one else knows. So you want to take all the intellectual property and make sure it's always in a system. So you need to preach systems and systemization all the time so that everything in your business is systematized. That way, if somebody leaves or somebody gets injured or somebody has to leave, move because someone else in their family is sick or their spouse got an incredible job on the other side of the country, you don't have to worry as much about it because the intellectual property of that person is already built into the system. So systematizing is actually in your good interest and best interest when you realize they're all going to leave. The third ramification of this is that you always want to make sure that you're planning your plan B. You always want to have a plan B, which in the hiring world always means that you should be building your virtual bench. Now, if you haven't taken the course yet on hiring in BizScalers, I encourage you to do that. But building your virtual bench means that you know that people are going to leave at some point. So rather than wait and then start looking, you should be on the lookout all the time for great talent. So anywhere you meet them, at a conference, at a networking meeting, at a restaurant, wherever you meet people, you just start thinking, well, is this somebody that I would like to hire someday? And if so, then keep building that relationship over time, because who knows, it might be 2 years or 7 years or 14 years later, you're going to tap them on the shoulder and say, I think I got a perfect job for you. And you've already built that in long before you lost the person in that position. So always make sure you have a plan B. And the fourth ramification of this is that you want to make it hard for people to leave. Make it hard for people to leave. Now, what that means for you and for me is you always want to be a great boss. That means that you want to make sure that you're always encouraging your people, that you're paying them well. I mean, that's a good strategy for keeping people. In fact, I remember years ago when I was in pastoral ministry, I went to visit a large church down in Texas, and I was there for a couple days, and I was talking with their executive staff, and one of the staff members told me that everyone on the executive team made about $30,000 to $40,000 more than they could make anywhere else in the country. And I remember thinking, what a great strategy, right? It makes it hard for those people to leave simply because you're going to take a major pay cut if you go anywhere else. So pay your people well. Don't pay them, just kind of, what others are paying. If you want to retain great talent, pay talent like it should be paid, right? Make sure that you're giving them challenging assignments, which will cause, high performers to not want to leave. Make sure there's a pathway for growth, and, do everything that you can to make it difficult for somebody to leave. And if you will do that, then you're going to retain longer. But even when you do all that, guess what? They're all still going to leave, right? You can elongate the time frame before they're going to leave, but at some point, it could be at 5 years or 7 years or 15 years, they're probably going to leave. And many times, having nothing to do with you. I mean, if you look at people's resumes, you usually see a lot of people every 3 or 5 or 7 or 10 years, they transition to another job. They just get the itch, and it has nothing to do with you. Even if you do everything right, they just want to change. Or maybe they want to change because of a family member situation. I mean, there's so many things that can happen. Just do all the right things, and then Whatever happens, it happens. But just know they're all going to leave. They're all going to leave. And if you know that they're all going to leave, then make sure that during that period of time that they're with you, that you help them become the best version of you. Make sure you systematize everything. Make sure you're building your virtual bench so you have your plan B. And then finally, in the midst of all of that, make sure you make it hard for people to leave. And we should qualify that. The people that you want to keep, make it hard for them to leave. So there you go, 4 ramifications of this important leadership lesson, that they are all going to leave, because they are. So I hope you enjoyed this week's leadership lesson. You can get rid of some of that fear and anxiety and instead focus in on the people and doing the things you need to do as the leader of your business. So until next week's leadership lesson, to your accelerated success, Bruce out. Well, I hope you found that really helpful. And if you did, I'd encourage you to pass this along to some other business owners or entrepreneurs that you know who might benefit from it. Also, if you're watching this by video and you haven't subscribed yet, or you're listening by podcast and you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button, because our commitment week in and week out is to provide you with actionable content that will help you grow and scale a great business. Also, if you are interested in the BizScalers Club, make sure you check it out at scalingclub.com, scalingclub.com, where we're going to help you learn everything that you need to know in order to be able to grow and scale a great business. So until our next episode, to your accelerated success, Bruce out.